This episode of the Real ResQ podcast is brought to you by SR3 Rescue Concepts, because you don't know what you don't know. Life-Saving Systems Corporation, we do our work so you can do yours. Tough gear for tough jobs. Breeze Eastern, the world's only dedicated hoist and winch provider. And Hilo Vodka, simply better vodka. SR3 Rescue Concepts is a training company that can help you with your helicopter training, a standardization and safety check, or maybe just an audit or an FAA refresher. They're ready to bring your agency up to date with current techniques, rules, regulations, and equipment. The training staff is amazing, with certified and flight instructor pilots, experienced crew members, which I'm happy to say that I get to be one of them. They offer training in rescue, medical, tactical, firefighting, ground operations, and night vision goggle use. SR3 has partnered with Petzl to assist with the PPE inspection course and the highly specific Lazard, which is used in helicopter cliff and mountain rescues. SR3 goes above and beyond the helicopter world too. They also provide high-angle rescue training and tactical medicine training. Contact them today at SR3ResQConcepts.com. That's SR3ResQConcepts.com. And follow them on Instagram at SR3_rescue. That's SR3_rescue. We're also brought to you by Life-Saving Systems Corporation. They manufacture the world's toughest helicopter rescue gear. From my favorite harness as a rescueman, the Triton, to the rescue baskets and litters, and of course the most popular hoist hook in helicopters, the D-Lock. The team at LSC cuts, bends, welds, sews, and machines these products into existence every day and then sends them on their way to us. We do our work so you can do yours. LSC, tough gear for tough jobs. Check them out today at lifesavingsystems.com. That's lifesavingsystems.com. And follow them on Instagram at ResQGEAR. That's at ResQGEAR. We're also brought to you by Breeze Eastern. Since the very first helicopter rescue in November 1945, Breeze Eastern has designed and manufactured superior rescue hoist solutions. While much of the technology and unique mission requirements have changed over the past 75 years, their commitment to the rescuers, the operators, and those who get rescued has not. Contact Breeze Eastern today by visiting them at breeze-eastern.com. That's breeze-eastern.com. And we are brought to you by Hilo Vodka. Hilo Vodka is a premium craft vodka, made from the highest quality ingredients and 6 times distilled. Hilo Vodka was made to be crisp, refreshing, and unintrusive. It's exactly how vodka should be made, clean enough to drink neat and worthy to be mixed with your favorite cocktails. They make a crisp, refreshing vodka that is carefully carbon filtered for a smooth sip and no bite. Hilo Vodka is proudly 100% American made and veteran owned. Simply better vodka. Order yours today by visiting HiloShopVodka.com. That's HiloShopVodka.com. FedEx delivery is available in most states. Use the promo code capitals RESQ and you get 10% off your order. Plus, if you buy 3 bottles or more, it's free shipping. Please remember to drink responsibly, and FAA Part 91 says 8 hours, bottle the throttle. I want you to take a minute. I want you to think about the word mentor. A mentor is somebody that you should be able to look up to, somebody that should give you advice, somebody that you can call upon if you have questions. When I was a new rescue swimmer just out of A school, there were a lot of guys that were my mentors, and I looked up to them all in the shop. Bob Watson, Kurt Revels, Jason Bunch, Will Milam. All of these guys were my mentors, and I looked up to each one of them for different tips and tricks that they have to help me with my job. Eventually, you become the mentor, and you have the younger rescue swimmer, rescue specialist. They're looking up to you for all of your advice and your tips and tricks. They're the ones that are coming to you for the answers because they're the ones that have the questions. Now you've lived it, you've experienced it, you now have the knowledge. My next guest, we had the opportunity to really mentor each other. I had a bunch of questions about paramedic stuff, and he really answered those and really helped me through my paramedic program. At the same time, he came to his first helicopter rescue unit, and I was his mentor to help him on the hook, in the aircraft, and with everything that we had going on. And together, we were an amazing team. The funny part about the whole thing is he's 8 years younger than me, which is not a big deal in any other scene. But when you think about the word mentor and who you're looking up to, they are usually older and have more experience. In this case, my boy Lane Abshire, younger than me, has so much more experience than me as a paramedic. So I looked up to him in order to teach me what I needed to know to get through medic school. So I ask you guys again, think about the word mentor. Can you go out there and get mentorship from somebody younger than you? Can you learn from somebody else that has more knowledge than you? Can you be the mentor to help somebody else grow beyond you? Because that's what happened between me and my boy, Lane Abshire. My name is Jason Quinn. I am United States Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer number 500. These are my rescues and rescues from those of us that put our lives on the line every day so others may live. This is the Real ResQ Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Real ResQ Podcast. With me today, my friend from Louisiana, my medic, my mentor. I know that it sounds crazy, but yes, Lane Abshire, amongst other people, were my mentors down there. So without further ado, Mr. Lane Abshire himself. What's up, Lane?
Jason Quinn, how are you?
Dude, I am fantastic now. I'm looking at you. Come on.
It's been a while.
It has. It has indeed. Dude, thanks for coming on today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, dude.
Absolutely. So I got to give everybody a little bit of a backstory because I truly mean that when I tell you, like, you guys down in the Gulf, man, you guys were my mentors to be medic. I don't think I would have made medic had it not been for you guys. So my paramedic training was awesome, but I had you, I had Lenny Cunningham, I had Eben Eben, I don't know how to pronounce his last name.
Nobody can pronounce his last name.
And then I had Alex, and then I had Ashley, and the Clarence. I mean, all you guys, I would bounce stuff off you guys, and you guys would give me information. And next thing you know, I'm passing my national registry, and I'm like, yeah. And that was all you guys. Well, it was a lot of you guys. So thank you.
Absolutely, man. That was a good dynamic down there.
We had a blast in down there. And, you know, when we were, so to even go further into the backstory. So you were one of the original guys that came down into the Gulf of Mexico with us when we were building that all up. And, you know, it was like from ground zero to build an entire program. And all of a sudden we're getting called out and launched out on Lord knows what. We didn't know what we were going to be rolling up on, and it was so fun, dude. Some of our hitches together, some of our times, you, me, Joe Martin, finishing off like 80 Mountain Dews between the three of us in like a 2-week period. Yes, that's a true statement. And I haven't touched a Mountain Dew since.
Oh, man. No, that was a good group of guys on there, dude. You know, I know you talk about, you know, the whole mentorship from the paramedic side, but I mean, we were fortunate to have such a good group of SAR guys. I was 24 years old whenever I started down there, dude. I didn't know anything about anything, you know, so it kind of came full circle. You know, we were kind of mentoring each other, you know, us to you from the medic side, and then you guys to us from the SAR side. You know, that was all new to us. That was new in the Gulf of Mexico. Nobody had ever really done it. Definitely not as well and as detailed as we did it down there, you know, so to have a good group of guys to mentor us through that was pretty cool too.
Well, thank you too, man. That's awesome. Well, if you don't mind, just kind of introduce yourself to everybody, where you're from, a little bit of a resume background, a little history about you.
Yeah. My name is Lane Abshire. I'm from the middle of nowhere, South Louisiana, around the Abbeville area, about 45 minutes south of Lafayette. I've been in EMS for it'll be 15 years on May 1st.
Yeah.
I've been a flight paramedic for the last just over about 10 and a half years. I have my flight paramedic certification, and then I was a rescue specialist and flight paramedic with you guys down in the Gulf, and then ended up crossing over as a hoist operator.
Good stuff. And you're working for who right now?
So I just actually about a year and a half ago, I took over a field training officer position with the ground EMS service close to the house here. It's ready to be closer to home, raise the kids. So I'm doing a lot of education stuff now. I'm working on a ground ambulance in a busy 911 area. I held on to some PRN status. I flew with Aerovac, a life team, from 2015 until just recently, about a month ago. Nice. Decided to, get rid of the whole part-time status thing and just get closer to home and raise the family and get more into the education side of things now.
Man, good for you. Well, I know where I'm going for my next class because that's I'll be coming right down to Louisiana. Lane, I'm in town.
Come on.
Dude, that's awesome. Well, all right. So you and I went through a bunch of stuff down in the Gulf of Mexico, and we had our own qualification period where it was it was on the job training. But after we were up and running, let's go over one of the first cases that you remember down there.
Yeah, I was actually fortunate enough to be on the first hoist case that we did as an organization down there in the Gulf of Mexico. I believe it was myself and Pat Barber. And I don't remember how far offshore it was. I want to say it was 70, 80 miles offshore. And guy was having chest pain, cardiac event. And that was my first, 24, 25 years old. I got thrown right into it. And it's kind of one of those things that you don't forget because, the physics of a human being hanging from a cable below a helicopter, those things just don't really go together.
Yeah, right.
And I mean, it was just it was intense. I remember the adrenaline and it kind of hooks you, I mean,
totally does.
Well, after that first one's done, you kind of really, either you're made to do it or you're not, right? It's either something you're going to love or something you're going to be scared to death of. Yeah. And, I think there's always kind of that fear because, at any moment in time, something can go wrong. But I think that's what kind of draws us to it. Yep. The knowing that something tragic could go wrong at any moment is kind of what forces us to be at our best at all moments. And that's what I enjoyed about it. I was just drawn to it.
Dude, that's awesome. And if I remember correctly, because I know there was a debrief well after that, because you guys were the first guys to do a live hoist. We had a big debrief about it, and it was just it was like a standard chest pain call. There was nothing really abnormal about it, and it was an easy in, easy out, but everybody knew about it and everybody talked about it, so it's pretty badass. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, it's a normal chest pain call until you throw in a Augusta 139 and a Goodrich hoist, and having to go down there and get the dude. And he thought he was having chest pain before, and then he's 300 feet over the water hanging from a freaking cable with an old ugly coon ass like me. I don't think that helped his chest pain at all.
No. Oh my God.
I'm smiling. He's scared to death.
Oh man, I loved it. There's a couple of things I remember. I'm going to touch on two cases that you and I did, and it was one of the first cases that I was on with you, and we had a landing. It was nothing more than a medevac. We landed on top of the rig. We go down, and this guy is frantically kind of flailing about, and oh my gosh, I'm in so much pain, and this, that, and the other thing. And I saw you in a whole new light, and the paramedic side, a whole new light. And that was the moment in time that I was like, I want to do that. I want to be able to do that, because he's getting ready to pass out, and you're like, don't pass out on me. And you're like, doing a little, oh yeah, it was awesome. Then we get up in the helo, and I shouldn't say this to everybody, but you're like, yeah, I'm going to give you some Namosaline. And the dude's like, okay, yeah. Do you feel better? Yeah, I feel better. All right, good. Yeah. I loved that case. So yeah, I'm not going to tell anybody else anything else about that because it was just fun for Lane and I.
Yeah, we had some good times for sure.
So there was another one that you and I had down there, which I thought was really interesting. And I wanted to bring this one up because it was a very unique case. And that was, we got called out for a guy having, he'd gotten hit in the head, if I remember correctly, and he was having like an amnesia attack. And basically he wasn't remembering anything past, he was like a 10-second Tom. Hi, my name's Tom. And then we walked up to him. Hey, my name's Tom. And so you and I, we got hoisted in. We went down below. Do you remember this?
I do.
All right. So we get down below on decks and Lane was doing a full assessment. You looked at me, you said, hey dude, get him on the ECG. Let's get a full 12 lead, blah, 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 blah. So we're doing all this stuff and you're having a conversation with him. And it was the funniest thing to me because you have the conversation with him and then he turns around and he's like, hey, what are you guys doing here? And you and I look at each other like, oh, this is going to be so fun. So what I'd like you to do from that moment in time is walk me through a little bit of what's going through your mind. Cause we still have to hoist this guy up to the helicopter and then bring him back. So go ahead.
Yeah. The thing I get, we get concerned about in patients like that with head injuries is intracranial hemorrhage, obviously. Right. So he has no recollection of what happened. We don't have a CAT scan on board or anything to be able to look inside his head. So it's all based off of assessment and signs and symptoms. That retrograde amnesia where he's just kind of repeating himself over and over again is, it could be a concussion, but more than likely it's indicative of intracranial hemorrhage, and then what part of the brain is bleeding, we don't know. The brain is a closed vault, right? So that blood and it's the Monroe-Kelly hypothesis, I believe, is, that it's brain, cerebrospinal fluid, and blood, right? But it's in a closed system, a closed vault. So, I mean, it can only expand so much. If one increases, the other ones have to decrease. And then there's only one place for it to go, and that's at the base of the skull. And once it herniates down there, you start getting into your respiratory centers and stuff, and things go downhill pretty fast. And then throw in the fact that we're, 100 something miles in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico.
Yep.
That kind of puts a whole nother dynamic in it. So it's kind of neurological emergencies. Time is muscle, right? Same as cardiac. So it's about how fast can we get him into the aircraft safely,
yep.
And then get him to definitive care. And then it's about, just continually assessing him because those patients can spiral out of control pretty fast. So decreasing external stimuli, which is extremely hard in the aviation environment. The helicopter's loud, the rotor wash, bouncing around. So decreasing external stimuli is pretty difficult. So yeah, that's what's going through my mind. When you start hearing a patient repeat themselves over and over again and doesn't have any recollection past, 10, 20, 30 seconds prior, you start getting real concerned about a intracranial emergency.
That's awesome. And I remember specifically with all of that is you and I up on the flight deck there, get ready to be hoisted. And all you leaned over to me is like, hey, if this guy decides to go batshit crazy, you and I are going to win this battle. And I was like, roger that.
Yeah. And that's dangerous not only for us, but it's dangerous for him because he has no idea what's going on.
Right.
He's not doing that because he wants to go crazy. He's doing that because his brain is hemorrhaging, right?
Yeah,
so
totally.
It's finding that, it's finding that balance between not only keeping ourselves safe, but keeping him safe as well.
And everything from that case went flawless. Like he got hoisted, no problem. You could see his eyes get a little bit bigger as like he's starting to get lifted off the ground. But everything went totally smooth. We got him into the hospital, and as far as I know, everything was good. I don't don't remember following up with any of that. But
yeah, no, I didn't either.
No,
yeah, I always referred to it as controlled chaos. Right.
Totally.
There was nothing controlled about that entire environment. Anytime we had patients, but somehow we found a way just to, make it as controllable as possible in an uncontrolled environment.
Yeah, it's pretty gnarly. It was awesome. All right, so that was that one. Then there's another one I want to talk about where you called me. It was I want to say this is another landing as well. So you guys got called out on something. And I remember you calling me and saying the patient was pretty legit in trouble. And you knew at that point in time, you're going to have to RSI and you were going to have to drop a tube. And if I remember correctly, you asked the pilots to shut down and you dropped out, looked at that Malin potty, saw the vocal cords, and boom, dropped the tube. And it was like that. You literally saved that guy's life that day.
Yeah, that dude was in flash pulmonary edema from an actual heart attack. I remember he was below the deck. He was, one of the bottom decks of that platform, had a massive heart attack, went into flash pulmonary edema. And we get down there, and the platform medic's trying to deal with him, but he's hypoxic as all get out. And I'm like, we need to get him to the helideck, the helipad, like 10 minutes ago. Like we got to get him out of here, because that flash pulmonary edema, once they go into that a myocardial infarction that causes that flash pulmonary edema, I mean, they're literally drowning in their own fluid.
Right.
So we managed to get him up to the helideck. And I think that was the first guy that we had RSI'd offshore either. That guy was like 170 miles offshore. He was far.
Yeah, and I know there was talk about
him to the deck.
Sorry, go ahead. I'll tell you a sec.
Yeah, he was deteriorating rapidly. We couldn't correct the hypoxia, couldn't get IV access on the guy, and we ended up drilling him. Ended up doing an IO insertion on him. Got him RSI, tubed him on the first attempt, managed to get him to UTMB in Galveston, where he went straight to the cath lab. He actually survived. I think he was discharged like 72 hours later or something like that. Yeah. Full recovery.
Yeah. And actually our medical director specifically came from UTMB to the airbase to talk to you about it and been like, bomb job. And this dude walked away because of you and what you did. So.
Yeah, and I think he was the physician that I turned. He was actually on duty that night in the ER when we flew in with that guy. And
awesome.
Yeah, there was a lot to that. And again, it's like, if you put that same call on a ground ambulance, or if you put that same call in the back of an aircraft, over land, where you're, a 20-minute, maybe a 30-minute flight to definitive care at most. Yeah. It's still an emergency, but it's not nearly as dynamic as if you throw in the fact that we're 170 plus miles offshore, and definitive care is not, 20 minutes away. Definitive care is like an hour and a half away. Right. Yeah. So it's like, it's trying to manage a patient who's in flash pulmonary edema, having a massive heart attack. We've sedated and paralyzed him and intubated him, and now we need to manage him for an hour and a half plus to definitive care. It always had a whole nother dynamic to it than if you would take those same emergencies and those same calls and put them in the back of a ground ambulance or in the back of a rural or overland air medical helicopter.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the differences are night and day too. Yeah, I mean your longevity as to how far you're going from point A to point B. The care is all going to be the same, but it's going to be, all right, we have this guy. I mean, we had a huge O2 tank that was like inside the med bed in the aircraft just to the long range SAR. It was not unheard of for us to be flying for 4 hours, to fly out to a spot, turn around and fly back. So 2 hours out, 2 hours back, refueling on the platform, coming back. So,
yeah, man. I mean, I can remember some 7, 8, 9 hour round trips, between getting out there and then flying into New Orleans and then dropping them off. And then by the time you get back to base, you've been gone for 7, 8 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. Like all day.
I mean, typically where I was flying at on land, typically we were going from start to finish, we were going for 3 hours. So I mean the difference there was just it was drastic. We were worn out some nights, man.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Hence the reason our 80 Mountain Dews.
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
Oh, man.
What I enjoyed about that operation though, man, was that we really had a brotherhood down there. We really had a family atmosphere. We were together for 2 weeks at a time, sometimes 3 weeks at a time. Spending 24 hours a day, kind of that home feeling, kind of blunted the sting of being away from your actual family for so long. And I think that's why we all got pretty close. I mean, we all came from different parts of the country down there. Right. And, you know, we also, you know, there's a lot of us that still stay in touch. You know, I could pick up with any of you guys any day of the week, and it be like we had just left.
Absolutely. Yeah, without a doubt. It's awesome. It's a great bond and brotherhood that we've definitely gotten just from being down there. And I mean, heck, you're right. We lived together for just about half the year. So half the year was with like the group of us down there, and then the other half was with our families. So we had two families.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So and we were taking care of each other down there. You know, I mean, it was and when you get up in that helicopter and those doors come open, things get real in a hurry. You know, so I mean, you have to have each other. It's not about you; it's about the guy next to you. You know, if you're taking care of him, he's taking care of you, and everybody goes home safe. That's what we always shot for. You know, we always wanted to just go out there and do our job and make sure we came back in the same way we left.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, dude, you spot on. So, all right. So I want to talk about one more, dude, out of the Gulf of Mexico, and then I'm gonna twist it into something that happened to you at Air Evac, and we'll touch on that in a minute. But so this one in particular was another life saved by your crew. And I'm going to name drop the three for sure that I know was the hoist operator, was the rescue swimmer, and you as the paramedic. And it was to a cruise ship. Now, I love going to cruise ships. It's a bummer that we have to go to the cruise ship to pick somebody up, but it is like going into a Super Bowl and you flash photography everywhere. And you're like, what? Everybody's filming you from the side of the deck of the ship. And you're like, this is crazy. So I get to see this on video. So you got Bryce Twombly hoisting, you got Roger Wilson as your swimmer, and you guys get called out to a patient that, if I remember correctly, was missed dialysis prior to getting on the cruise ship, and
that's right. A week before, she had missed a week of dialysis.
So she crashed on the ship, and they go, dude. Take it from there.
Yes, they so we were sitting. I remember that we were Mike Lorenzi was one of our pilots that night, and we were sitting in the house just hanging out. And Mike comes in. He's like, "Hey, the Coast Guard just called and said that there's a cruise ship inbound." I think they was still 100 and something miles offshore. He said there's a cruise ship inbound with a critical patient on it, and the Coast Guard doesn't have, they don't have a paramedic on board, and they're wondering if, it's too critical for them to go out there and take care of. They're wondering if we can go out there and do it. We're waiting on this and waiting on that. I was like, dude, absolutely. I said, let's go. He was like, all right, well, we're going to wait around and wait till we get word. I was like, well, all right, whatever. And then Mike comes back. He was like, well, what if we launch on a training flight?
Yep.
And then if, things become a go, we're already out there. I was like, that's brilliant. So that's what we did. We ended up launching on a training flight.
Yeah.
And then the case became a go. And Raj, I still talk to Raj. Roger's that's one of my dudes, man. He's a good dude.
Solid.
I was glad
rescue
to be out
swimmer.
there.
He's a Coast Guard rescue swimmer. Solid guy.
Yeah, just a good all around dude, man. Like, I mean, you can't ask for a better guy. He in the helicopter or out of it, solid. Yeah. Just a solid dude, man. I was happy to be on that case with him. That was one of my first. I mean, I'd had a few kind of high profile cases before that, but that was like my first. Like, this is going to be a really, really fun, interesting. This is going to be a high acuity patient. There's going to be a lot going on here.
Right.
So we hoisted down to the front half of the front part of the deck of the cruise ship. And we go in the cruise ship, and they actually, I remember this, they had a retired Air Force physician on the medical staff of that cruise ship, and they did a great job with this patient. The patient was in severe metabolic acidosis from missing dialysis for like a week and a half, had went into, severe renal failure, and they ended up having to RSI her on the cruise ship and intubate her. They had like a Versed drip going and all kind of stuff. So the dynamic there was that the patient was already intubated when we got down on deck. So now we have to hoist her back into the helicopter with the breathing tube. I'm bagging her. I've got all my gear, ALS bag, life pack 15, oxygen tank. So we have to get all this stuff attached to me in the hoist hook with the patient and transition back into the aircraft. And it's a night hoist.
Yeah. Like everything is going like against you guys on this case. It was crazy.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. So Raj got me all hooked up and everything. We put the patient in a pet bag, the patient extrication package, on a spawn board, and we had our straps and everything. We were able to get everything attached to me in the hoist hook. I had stuff, and if the video, the FLIR video that we ended up taking it from, it kind of showed it, man. There was just stuff hanging off of me everywhere. A 40-pound freaking ALS bag, oxygen tank, a life pack monitor. So Rod just tinted the tagline. We get underneath the helicopter. When we start hitting the rotor wall, she's tinted a tagline well, so I'm kind of hanging and bag and breathe for her. And then I get underneath the skid, and I catch some rotor wall spin, right? And I spin underneath the skid, and I've got a god awful amount of weight attached to me with the patient and all the gear. And I have to separate, and push away from the skid to clear me and the patient on the skid. And Bryce has got his foot on me, and he's like pushing me away from the skid, trying to get it. And at one point, the only way that I could get clear of the skid was to let go of the bag valve mask that was still attached to the ET tube. And I just remember it just flashing through my head. I'm like, the rotor wash is going to take this freaking bag valve mask clean off of this ET tube, and then we're really going to be in a bind. Right now, I don't have a way to freaking breathe for it until I get in the aircraft. Luckily, long story short, the bag valve mask stayed attached to the ET tube. We ended up clearing the skid. Bryce did an excellent job of getting us back in the aircraft and transitioning us onto the med bed. And then we, continued care we flew into Lourdes that night. I remember that in Lafayette. And I don't recall that. I didn't follow up. I don't recall the outcome of that patient, but that was a pretty dynamic. That was a dynamic call. That was probably one of the more dynamic calls that I had out there in the Gulf, just because she was already intubated when we got there. So it was, having to hoist her. And when you have an intubated patient, it's not like you can just come up with the patient and nothing else. You have to have oxygen. You need to have all your stuff with you, because what you get concerned about is if you just try to come up with an intubated patient and say a bag valve mask to try to make things, lighten the load and get into the aircraft easier. And then we get into the aircraft with the patient and we get an aircraft emergency,
right,
or something where we have to immediately depart scene. Now all my ALS gear is left on scene, and I have to leave with a patient, and I have no way to maintain or continue care because all my gear is left on the deck. So your only option is to get the patient and all of your gear into the aircraft in one hoist. And we ended up making it happen. And you have to attribute that to the skill level of you guys coming from the Coast Guard for years and years, and just being so competent and proficient at what we did down there. And I don't think there's a lot of flight crews that could have pulled that off as successfully as Bryce and Raj did that night.
It was incredible. And the video that was shown of you guys coming up and you specifically bagging the patient and it was on point, dude. It was every 3 to 5 seconds there was a breath, and just everything was exactly the way it was taught and the way it should be. And then you get to the skid and you see you come right around it. And the outcome that I had heard was that she lived because of you guys. So that got passed out to me when I came on to duty next. So I'm going to give you the props and say, good job. You saved her life for sure.
Yeah. So, I was a small part of a big team, man. Yeah. You know what I've told people too, in that, I had some crazy stuff happen after I left the Gulf of Mexico into my next flight job. And, with everything that happened there, which we'll talk about here in a bit. So, I remember calling a few of the guys that were there in the initial part of me getting into, because that was my first aviation job. And imagine I'm 24 years old. I've been a medic for I had been a medic for like 5 years at that point, right? I was still like
Yeah.
really young in my career to begin with. And then it's like, here's your first flight job. Congratulations. Not only is it aviation, but it's SAR as well, which is a dream job for a civilian medic, right?
Yeah.
And then, you know, fast forward to 2018 when all that other stuff happened. You know, I attribute the outcome of that incident to me being raised by competent and proficient guys like you that had been doing it for years and years before me, and just kind of instilled that mindset, you know, that you know, no complacency mindset, that accountability mindset, you know, because one day things are going to go bad, and they're going to go bad in a moment's notice, and you don't have time to think, you just have time to react, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've told a lot of people, dude, I'm nothing more than a product of the people that I've surrounded myself by. And, you know, it was you guys that I was surrounded by for, you know, so many years down there in the Gulf. And yeah, I learned a lot.
Well, I'm going to get into that right now, that this case that you're talking about, because it's an incredible read for anybody that wants to Google it and look it up. It's in Vertical Magazine. The name of the article is A Fighting Chance, Surviving Pilot Incapacitation. It's written by Ellen Head, and this is dated March 19th, 2019. And what I'm going to do, Lane, is I'm just going to read really the first bit of this. And if you don't mind, I'd really like for you to take us through kind of what happened and how you guys as a team just made this work. So, all right.
Yeah.
All right. So here we go. Where are we going? It was January 12th, 2018. The Air Evac Life Team helicopter had just lifted from a scene call near its base in Kinder, Louisiana, north of Interstate I-10 between Lake Charles and Lafayette. The patient was a frail, elderly woman who had been sedated and intubated on scene. In the back of the Bell 206L Long Ranger, flight nurse Tara Couple, is that right?
Tara
Coupel and flight paramedic Lane Abshire were attending to the patient when the pilot's voice came over the intercom. Where are we going? Lafayette General, Abshire answered, referring to Lafayette General Medical around 50 miles southeast of their location. Okay, where? The pilot asked. Abshire and Coupel thought at first that there was a problem with the ICS system. They unplugged their helmet cords and then plugged them back in and tried telling the pilot again. But he replied again. Okay, where? The helicopter was now 800 feet above the ground. Abshire asked Coupel to get out of her seat and tell the pilot where they were headed. She unbuckled her seatbelt, removed her helmet, moved forward to tap on the pilot's shoulder. Lafayette General, she shouted at him. Although she was disconnected from the ICS, she could see his mouthing words beneath the mic boom. Okay, where? Coupel returned to her seat, put on her helmet, and plugged in. Lane, something's going on, she said. It was around that time Abshire realized they were flying in the wrong direction. We were flying in a left-handed bank. We were flying in a left-handed circle, he recalled. And I'm like, there's something wrong. That's just the beginning of this article. Lane, when you called me to tell me this story, I was blown away. So what I'd like you to do for us here is I'd like you to backtrack to us and kind of give us a rundown. You guys got called out to an elderly patient and you got called out to an on-scene call.
Yeah, and we entered the residence. Patient was unresponsive, was having a massive CVA, massive stroke. So we elected to RSI her on scene and place an advanced airway. And so we got control of her airway, got her into the aircraft, put her on the portable ventilator, the mechanical ventilator, put some settings in, and advanced breathing for her. And then so Tara had actually, my flight nurse had actually done the advanced airway. I let her intubate that day. So we ended up swapping seats for that flight so that she could continue managing the airway, because typically I would sit right behind the patient's head for airway management purposes and whatnot. So we got her in the aircraft, Tara secured. I closed the door. I'm checking latches and everything, doing a pre-takeoff walk around like we always do. And then I go to the front of the aircraft, and our pilot is, doing his pre-takeoff checklist, gives me a thumbs up. I give him a thumbs up. Everything's cool. Everything's fine. I finish a pre-takeoff walk around. I get in the aircraft. I secure belts. We're secure left, right, aft, ready for departure. He pulls pitch, and we're going. He had never shut down. He just came to idle. So I think he came to idle. I don't recall. No, maybe not. No, he hadn't. He had shut down because we had decided to RSI. So we take off. We get to altitude, and then he starts asking where we're going, like the article's saying, and then and it kind of went back to I think in aviation we have a very systematic approach to potential emergencies, the communication issue. We have a systematic approach to sorting through that stuff. In SAR, we have a systematic approach with EPs on, when things go wrong, it's boom, boom, boom. We take the guesswork out of it, go through your steps, check this, check that, unplug, plug in, sort through it. And then, and so that's what we did. And we realized it wasn't an ICS issue. So that's when Tara had now the Bell 206, the patient lays forward aft on the port side of the aircraft, on the left side of the aircraft. So you're kind of having to lean over the top of a patient if you're gonna talk to your pilot. Tara manages to do that. He's just repeating himself over and over again, and it's nothing's happening. So I realized we were in an emergency. We had an in-flight emergency. So I took my helmet off and got out of my seat, and there's a crossbar over the patient, the stretcher, and it's a support beam for the aircraft. So I managed to wedge myself between the patient and that support bar and get to the front of the aircraft. And man, when I tapped him, I just remember him looking at me, just looked right through me. And it was at that point where I was, my heart kind of sunk in my throat, and I was like, he's having a freaking stroke in the cockpit.
Now, mind you, I want to put this out there for everybody that's listening. You're in a single pilot aircraft right now, a Bell 206. Can be flown with two guys.
Yeah, single
but
pilot
you have a
aircraft.
Single pilot, one guy up front, two medics, or a nurse and a medic in the back. One driver.
Yeah. So I turn around at Tara, and there's obviously some emotions flying back and forth because we realized what was going on. And then one thing that we talked about after and I talked about in another podcast at AMTC was and the guy Eric had brought it up. He said we always train in the moment of calling a mayday, but it was kind of one of those things. I remember telling Tara, I was like, call the mayday, like get on the radio, call the mayday. I had my helmet off, so I couldn't talk to her on my mic boom. So we were just having to yell back and forth. But her getting on the radio, because she still had her helmet on, calling that mayday, and then getting the comm center involved, getting the aviation guys involved, gave her somebody to talk to, and that kind of got us both back on track. And okay, like let's see what we can sort through while we still have whatever time we have left.
Yeah.
But that mayday call thing, that mayday call is kind of like the admission that you have done everything you can in the short term, and now we have to openly admit that we are in an in-flight emergency. And that is like the moment where things get pretty real. Because it's like, all right, mayday, airvac 125, do you copy? When those words mayday actually come out of your mouth and you hear them on a radio, it's like, shit, this is real. Like, this is not a drill. This is real. We've practiced this over and over. And then here we are in an actual scenario where it's actually real. So I'm trying to talk to him, I'm trying to just get him to land in every field. We're in a rural area, very rural area. And it's just not happening. So long story short, randomly, he ends up looking out of the aircraft and he says the words there, which was, just completely different. So he ends up, now this guy had been a 30 plus year military pilot, retired. I would have flown anywhere with this dude. Like this guy could just fly an aircraft. And just the muscle memory of him flying the aircraft for so many years, I believe it was just natural for him. He made a perfectly controlled descent of the aircraft. I'm helping him control the cycling because it appeared that he had a deficit on his right side where, you know, he would be controlling a cyclic. So I'm helping him just keep the aircraft from, you know, drifting left and right. And he makes a perfectly freaking controlled descent of a Bell 206 and touches it down in somebody's backyard.
Holy shit.
I mean, and the thing is that what's amazing is that it was as smooth of a landing as I've ever had in a helicopter, and he's having an active bleed in his head, you know. So it just goes back to that commitment to excellence, and he had been doing it for so long and so many years that even in a neurologic emergency, he still got enough muscle memory to make a controlled descent of a 206 and freaking landed in somebody's yard.
Wow.
You know, so hindsight, you know, fast forward after post incident, we ended up getting him to a hospital and transferred care of our patient to another aircraft and got everything sorted out. He ended up having a bleed in his Brokaw's area, I believe is what it was, which is the reason why he just kept repeating himself over and over again. The crazy part about it is after I was able to sit and talk with him in the aftermath of it, him and I were able to sit down a few times and chat. And he actually, and this was unbeknownst to us, obviously, because we're in an emergency, it's all hindsight, but he was actually able to understand everything that I was trying to tell him to do. He just couldn't process it and put it into action. So he understood everything I was telling him. He just couldn't do anything about it because he had a bleed in his head. Yeah. So, you know, as traumatizing as crazy of an incident as that was for us, it was equally stressful for him because, you know, he's at the controls of an aircraft. He understands everything I'm trying to tell him to do, but he can't do anything about it.
Oh
yeah,
dude.
Because he's got a bleed. He can't formulate a response to me because he's got a bleed in his head that prevents him from formulating a logical response.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You know, there's two other things that you had told me, you know, when you first called me that really stuck out to me. And it's still today, I think about it, is that when you guys landed, you know, because like you said, you were helping him kind of control the aircraft to get down to the ground. And again, you started at about 800 feet and had to slowly descend into some dude's backyard, which I'm going to touch on in a second. But when you landed, his response was to try to take off again, and you had to push the collective down and then shut off fuels and batteries and everything else to actually shut the aircraft down so he couldn't take off.
Yeah, and that was another thing, talking about EPs and stuff, right? One thing that we practiced a lot of was emergency shutdown procedures. So as soon as we got to the ground, I initiated an emergency shutdown procedure. I throttled down, killed the fuel, killed the battery over the head, and engaged the rotor brake. And then once the rotor stopped spinning, my flight nurse got out and went around and actually had to physically remove him from the cockpit. So she gets him out of the aircraft. I'm trying to peel myself out backwards. Mind you, I literally, unfortunately, I had to crawl on top of an intubated, unresponsive patient, which hindsight, it was probably a good thing that she was unresponsive, because that would have just been a whole nother scenario in itself had we had a patient who was actually responsive.
Oh gosh,
in the aircraft. Just a whole nother thing to worry about and have to kind of sort through, right? So while I'm trying to peel myself out of the aircraft so I can get out the aircraft, he's trying to get back in the aircraft and flip battery power back on like we have somewhere to go. So that, you know, my flight nurse was able to keep him away from the aircraft and, you know, buy me some time to get out. And then you know, at that time, everybody's showing up on scene because 911 had actually dispatched everybody for an aircraft crash. So, I mean, we've got other helicopters coming, we've got law enforcement and fire and everybody kind of converging on our general area, waiting to see what happens. But yeah, it all worked out, man. And again, dude, it was one of the things. It's like, you know, you have to tip your hat to to the pilot, 30 plus years of flying an aircraft and still being able to do that in a time where his brain is actively bleeding. And then, everything from the crew aspect, it's just a team aspect, right? It's not any one individual or
100%
anything.
agree.
I've often thought about like how would that situation have changed had it been a brand new flight crew on board, or a flight nurse and a flight paramedic that had never flown together, or in an inexperienced pilot, or whatever you want to call it. If it wouldn't have been as experienced of a team as we had in the aircraft that day, between the pilot and then myself and Tara, who had been flying together for some time. So we knew each other. We were very comfortable with each other in the back of the aircraft. So I often wonder how that situation may have panned out had it been a little different.
Well, this is the other part of this, because, I believe you guys had a little extra hand on that, especially when you tell everybody whose backyard you landed in.
Yeah. That was kind of the part of the story you really couldn't make up if you tried, because I was trying to get him to land anywhere. I mean, I just wanted him to put it down in a field. We were flying over, rice fields and crawfish ponds. I'm like, we just need to get to the ground, right?
Yeah.
And of all the places he could have landed that helicopter, we ended up landing. We landed in a yard, and after everything kind of settled down, the neighbors had come out and they were like, is everything okay? And we're like, yeah, everything's good. And which was a flat out freaking lie. Right. But so I'm like, yeah, everything's good. We just had to make a precautionary landing. And then the other neighbor comes out, and he's talking to me, and he's like, he said, I forgot exactly how he worded it, but long story short, we had managed to put that aircraft down in the yard of the local pastor of the church. I'm like, dude,
get an amen?
I don't care what you believe in, but you can't make that up.
No. So you know what? You had 3 crew members and a patient, and then an extra hand with you that day.
Yeah.
That brought you to the backyard of a pastor's house. Dude.
Yeah.
Crazy. And you know what? And you're here talking to me about it. And I am blessed to know you and happy to have you as a friend, my brother.
Yeah, likewise, man. Likewise. And going back to, a lesson learned there. And this was like a big takeaway from me, because I was raised on the SAR side of things. One thing that we lived and died by in SAR were those damn checklists. Right, the pre-takeoff checklist, the on-scene checklist, and then the rescue checklist. Right, but before and they were all done religiously, and they were done every single flight. You didn't miss them. You just didn't miss them. Right. Fact. So a takeaway from that flight, and I beat myself up on it for a while, just because it was literal. So we had a pre-takeoff checklist and a pre-landing checklist in a 206. And one thing that we did not do, just the patient's critical. We're trying to, we're moving fast. We're trying to move smooth and get the patient to definitive care. We actually missed the pre-takeoff checklist before pull and pitch. And it's the only time in my entire career that I've ever missed a freaking checklist, and that was the end result of it. And in hindsight, I don't think, there's no part of me that thinks that it would have changed anything, but I couldn't help but wonder, like, if we would have did that pre-takeoff checklist, would he have responded inappropriately at any point in time during the checklist, because it's a challenge response. So so I couldn't help I couldn't help but wonder, like, if we hadn't missed the checklist, if at any point in time, because it's a challenge response checklist, I'm asking you something and you are required to respond with an answer, checking temps and gauges, your engine RPM, fuel level, and all that stuff. If he would have responded inappropriately at any point in time during that checklist, then maybe I could have kept him on the ground. Yeah. Like, it responded weirdly, and I'm like, wait, no, something ain't right here. shut the aircraft down. We're going by ground kind of thing.
Yeah.
Hindsight of it, I don't think it would have changed. I don't think it would have changed anything because I did during the pre-takeoff walk around. I stood at the front of the aircraft while he was starting it up. He went through his checklist, you know, in the cockpit of the aircraft, his startup procedures, and he did his startup procedures flawlessly. And then when we got in the aircraft, he needed to turn the main O2 on in the back. And he understood whenever we asked him to do that, he turned the switch on. I don't think it would have changed anything, but coming from that SAR background where we live and die by those checklists, right. I couldn't help but wonder, right? You couldn't help but wonder. So, you know, that one of the takeaways is just like, man, you know, slow down, no matter what's going on, slow your mind down just enough to make sure you get that checklist done because it might save your life.
Yeah, man, great advice. Great advice. And we live and die by the checklist every time I go flying now too.
For sure.
I mean, you know, from as simple as just making sure your rigging is set up, you know, the appropriate way in the back of the aircraft.
Yeah.
I mean, that's awesome. Lane, I'm beside myself, dude. That story is just, every time I hear it, I'm like, dude, I'm so happy I'm sitting here talking to you. So
yeah, I'm happy I'm sitting here talking to you too.
Dude, well, the floor is going to be open to you, buddy. You know, you can kind of touch on anything. I know you just talked about, you know, checklists and stuff as far as is something that you took away from that. But any advice you would give anybody else out there?
Yeah, man, I think, you know, it's like I said earlier, I'm nothing more than a product of the people that I've surrounded myself by in my career. I've been fortunate to be surrounded by people who are a hell of a lot smarter than I am. And I've just tried to be a sponge around those people and just constantly try to learn something from them every day. You know, so I think, you know, advice wise, you know, surround yourself with people who are going to challenge you. Surround yourself with people who are intelligent, that are going to teach you something, you know, and then I've been lucky to be surrounded by people who believe in accountability and have held me accountable and has taught me accountability and holding other people the same. And I think at the end of the day, accountability is what prevents complacency. And if you can't prevent complacency, then, you know, it's that I think that's when things can get bad. I think complacency is what kills. And I think accountability helps prevent that. Well
said, sir. Well said. Man, that's awesome. Lane, I can't thank you enough for coming on and just sharing this stuff with us. It's always a pleasure to see you, brother. Like, I love seeing you. But the fact that brother. You just, you know, you're sharing this with a lot of people right now that are like, if they're like me, sitting there like, holy cow, the dude had a stroke in the front of the helicopter and you helped him land in the back of a pastor's house. Are you kidding me right now?
Yeah, just teamwork, man. You know,
awesome.
You're only as good as the weakest link in your team. And, you know, fortunate for us that day, there wasn't a weak link in it.
Damn right. Freaking awesome. Well, thank you, Lane. I've taken too much of your time already and I appreciate you being here. So.
No, brother, I'm glad we got to catch up, man. It's been a long time.
Absolutely. And I'll give you a call again sometime offline.
All right, brother. Hey, stay safe out there, fly safe, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, you too, my man. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of here. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Real ResQ podcast. Please take a minute and, like my daughters like to tell me, like and subscribe. Oh yeah. I'm pulling chocks and taking off. But before I go, if anyone out there has a rescue story that they would be willing to share, I would be humbled and honored to have you as a guest. Or if you have any questions about any of the rescues or anything else that we talk about here on this podcast, send me an email. therealresq@gmail.com. That's TheRealResQ@gmail.com. You can also check us out on our Facebook and Instagram page at The Real ResQ. That's at TheRealResQ. I also want to give a special thank you to all of you staying on the watch today. Always remember that when that SAR alarm goes off, those in distress are praying for a miracle. They are going to get you. Until next time, fly safe and swim hard.